Okay, so I have been trying to get a piece up about... So many people have been asking, why have you never... I have been trying to, in some form, put a piece up of some sort of speculation, talking more about the James Gunn Superman possibilities, where this could be going, talking about it in general as a project that I'm excited about thinking about, on the big picture, as a review of some of the other projects, as something well over, since it's been announced, probably almost 2 years now. And the reason that you haven't seen a lot of it go up, this is just cards on the table transparency here, is because I have probably written between my own show, between this, between outlets that I can't even start naming, work that has been done prospectively for film theory, for theorists, that hasn't even run or may not run because of delays in the projects. So various scripts that get written or set up to be written, or outlines for projects to be written at some point, end up not coming together or getting recontextualized into something else or recycled into other projects.
What the hell are you talking about?
I have probably written a version of, hey, here's what I think is going to happen in James Gunn's Superman, hey, here's what I think is going to happen in James Gunn's DC Universe, probably over 3 dozen different times in this period, and haven't ended up running hardly any of them, or reseeding bits of it into other stuff because of how many delays there's been, how many times the plans seem to have changed, and how many times things haven't come out, and it just feels like you're talking about almost nothing. And I understand why people do it. If I was capable, if I had it still in me, in my increasing advancing age, to do 45 minutes of completely fake, knowing completely fake bullshit speculation of, here's a set photo of 2 actors on a set, what does it mean? Knowing that we don't know what it means and can't know what it means, but let's pretend on it. Like it's the scene in Anchorman 2 where they're inventing Fox News by guessing what might be going on in a car chase that means nothing. Good God, do I wish that I was capable of willing myself in to doing the kind of non-work that now actually earns some people a decent living on YouTube. Which sounds bitter, because it is bitter. Astonishingly, the man in his near mid-40s broadcasting on a YouTube channel in front of you is a little bit bitter about how his life turned out. So now, lo and behold, my exclamations of joy that Creature Commandos has now finally come out, the 3rd James Gunn project in the DCU, the first official new continuity one. I guess the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker still sort of count. Parts of them that are mentioned in Creature Commandos count. I really do appreciate James Gunn coming right up front and saying that things count until they don't, and everyone please get the fuck over it. I really love that. Thank you, James Gunn. Bless you for just letting us all, giving us permission to be loose about this, and reminding us that it doesn't fucking matter.
Does canon matter anymore anyway?
Well, one of the weird things to me is that none of this is real. It may be alarming to people, but none of it is real.
Love this man. But Creature Commandos, which is a great fucking show, actually came out. And part of what has been eating at me is that despite how little there is to fully say about the incoming DCU, because we don't know anything fully, and the new Superman, which they've got a really tight lid on, despite the fact that they've been shooting it and there's guesses and set photos all over the place, is I actually do have a very strong sense, because I've always watched James Gunn's career very closely since before really people had any big investment in this particular filmmaker. I had been following this guy since the Troma days, and when he broke big, I was like, this is my guy, and that has really paid off dividends. I knew this guy was something special, and it has turned out I was exactly right. And those of you who've been watching the show for a while know how much I love to say when I was right, and so it's fortunate that it happens a lot. And I have had very strong feelings that I knew where he was going with the Superman movie, with the DC Universe, to the degree that there was a plan here. what it might be. And Creature Commandos, along with being just a kick-ass cool monster cartoon, really does seem to confirm a lot of what I felt like they were doing with this, but also seems to suggest something that I was only sort of feeling, starting with the Suicide Squad and then continuing through Peacemaker, that there was a whole other element to this coming through. And it now, finally, that it's out, that there's like a project out there to talk about that's ongoing, gives me an excuse to actually get into this and say, I know, I see you, James Gunn, and I know what you're doing. I know what this is now. I know who you are! I think I know what this is now and what it's going to be, and it's very cool and very exciting to me. So, yeah, this is that. This is what I think about that. This may end up sounding even more all over the place than this unscripted intro, because some of this is stuff that I've been writing up and wanting to say and get out there for a while. The bottom line is, I think I see the vision now, and it excites the fuck out of me. So here we go on that. To the first point of it, Creature Commandos so far is just a bunch of fun. As I'm starting to script this out, it's run 2 episodes. Let's see where it's at when I actually get this up. But so far, yeah, very good version of exactly what it says on the label show. In this case, that as advertised label being an R-rated cartoon follow-up to the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, where they're doing Suicide Squad again, but now they gotta use monsters and or non-humans instead of incarcerated villains. So the team is Weasel, a gill woman, a robot, a glowy skeleton guy, and the Bride of Frankenstein. That's pretty fucking cool. Good pitch, delivers on the premise. I mean, yeah, that's about as plain as I can make it. If the idea of this as described sounds like you're gonna like it, you're gonna like it. If not, you're probably not. This is the grandma's home cooking of violent superhero cartoons. Did you love this before? Here's some more of it. And also, yeah, I won't front. Starting off with men's rights goons in red caps who want to launch a gender war invasion of Themyscira as the lead-off villain threat for the new DCU, both as deliberate provocation of the whiniest dipshits in fandom and a plot point to basically seed right up front. Yeah, those Wonder Woman movies, those didn't happen anymore. We're probably recasting that part 2 is just delightful. Mwah.
Cersei claims to be the rightful heir to the throne of the perhaps mythical, perhaps real, all-female island nation of Themyscira. Inside sources claim Cersei has promised the sons that once the downfall of Pokolistan is achieved, she will lead them to conquer Themyscira.
I mean, seriously, Themyscira is like the sickest place ever, and then you tell me, oh dude, only women can live there? What? That is so sexist, bro.
Word is they have the most incredible waterfalls. I have this question for all the woke feminists out there. Why do only girls get such cool waterfalls?
I also appreciate, beyond the immediate context of it being similar to Peacemaker, in that it's both a comics adaptation profoundly invested in the deeper, obscure lore of its source material and working cleverly to seed out dozens of story points and character setups for an emerging shared universe TV movie experiment that still manages to feel primarily centered on being good episodic character-driven television, that it doesn't feel at all like the weight of launching, soft launching, or any kind of launching the DC movie universe in some monumental sense weighing on its shoulders. Whether the marketing or meta-marketing will let it remain that way or not in wider perception, of course, being another story. This also wasn't something the Suicide Squad seemed to have hanging over it, which is even more impressive considering that project actually was a do-over, apology, retcon, whatever, for one of the most egregious failures of the previous DC movieverse attempt. In much the same way that Iron Man didn't announce itself as the start of a culture-reshaping multimedia mega project back in 2008, it basically arrived as, hey, here's a pretty decent movie about a guy with a robot suit, and then let Samuel L. Jackson pop in at the very end and go, hey, we're thinking of trying something a little crazy in a couple years, folks, and even then it took a couple more movies to fully unveil just how big the whole Marvel thing was planning to go.
Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D.
This James Gunn-fronted DCU project is basically taking it one step at a time, and it feels pretty clear even though there's now 3 full projects in the official continuity of this, and a couple things or pieces of things from before that might still count. We're still sort of in prologue mode until that new Superman movie comes out, and that's where we're gonna get the statement of purpose, this is what the DCU is, and this is what we're doing here. But like I said up front, I've had a feeling for a long time, pretty much right from the jump when Gunn announced the first 10 project slate for this, that I could discern at least the possibility of a clear pattern for where he was going or getting up to with all this. If you follow me on social media, you've probably heard me go on about it a lot more than you have just on video or essays, because look, honestly, between project delays and the lack of real data, eventually it felt like just the smarter move to wait until there was more of a clear picture to work from than just, I have a really strong sense of how this specific filmmaker's mind works, even though I do, and I feel like James Gunn has been telegraphing, some of the bigger places he and his colleagues might be taking all of this for a while, but for now I want to talk about Superman specifically because I've had a feeling about where that that was going and what it means for this whole enterprise. And now 3 prologue projects deep, I'm much more comfortable saying, okay, I think I see what we're building up to here. Specifically, a rebuilding of the classical superhero for a new world, and additionally, something like a rebuke or at least an answer to what's effectively been 20 years of the tone that Disney and the MCU have set for the entire genre. I will explain.
Who the fuck starts a conversation like that? I just sat down.
One of the few things James Gunn, Peter Safran, and others have been really upfront about when it comes to the new DCU movies is that they aren't deeply concerned about origins, especially when it comes to their biggest characters. Everybody already knows Batman, Superman, etc., where they come from. We don't need to do that again, and it really does seem like they've committed to that kind of vibe even further across the board. James Gunn's Superman, originally titled Superman Legacy, put a pin in that, supposedly starts with the Man of Steel being a new-ish figure in the world, but already a grown adult who's been doing his thing out in public as Superman for at least a couple years as the story opens. The Brave and the Bold, the scheduled Batman and Robin project, is set to feature Damian Wayne, the Robin who's Bruce's son. That usually means there's been 2 or 3 Robins who've grown to adulthood before him, and thus probably a middle-aged or older Batman. Lanterns is going to have Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart as a team, and Guy Gardner is in Superman, so that's 3 Green Lanterns already. Presumably they can't all be originating on screen. Meanwhile, in the Suicide Squad, Amanda Waller burned through a whole team's worth of excess supervillains in the opening minutes just because she can and it was funny. Peacemaker established a decades-long history of supervillain and hero activity so relatively common that when the cops realized they'd put basically KKK Iron Man in regular prison, they were concerned, but like not that concerned, and now Creature Commandos leads off by establishing that people don't necessarily know if Themyscira and the Amazons exist, but if they did, it wouldn't be like a big surprise because flying superhuman sorceresses and the Bride of Frankenstein are just things that both exist in this world, and people know about them. Like at one point, Frankenstein is on a boat, and it's neither an unusual or unexpected thing, apparently, that Frankenstein exists or that he's on a boat. In other words, this comic book universe has been a comic book universe for a while on both a meta and basic storytelling level, and they're assuming you can keep up with that because the genre has saturated the culture long enough that not every shred of it needs reintroduction. We get the basics. That's a good approach. It's efficient. It cuts to the chase. It gets to the good stuff and so on and so forth. And setting up to do a Superman movie in that context where Clark Kent is a new or newer guy on the scene rather than a veteran or even the first hero, the way he's usually set up in DC continuities, is potentially a really clever way to solve the how do you make Superman feel relatable to younger audiences in the 2020s question. You make him the young guy instead of everybody's dad. But what's interesting at this juncture is the way this world of established heroes has actually been established in terms of its tone. It's one thing to go superheroes, monsters, magic, super science stuff have all existed in this world for a long time, but the next most important question is how you present it. What effect has this had on the world it takes place in? What is this world like because of this? How does everyone else occupying this universe react to having lived with all this going on around them, sometimes to them? And the answer, as thus far presented by Suicide Squad, Peacemaker, and now Creature Commandos, appears to be everyone's kinda over it.
I'm tired.
Now, the whole point of the gag in the Suicide Squad is deconstructing the good-evil mythos in the genre in a cynical fashion, so it's somewhat obvious there, but Peacemaker really dug into these concepts heavily in a surprisingly serious way in terms of how the failure of these various larger-than-life figures to actually live up to what we might need them to be is a mutually traumatizing thing for the actual characters and the world they're operating in. John Cena as Peacemaker is this not terribly bright, not terribly good, but also not evil enough to actually be an effective anti-hero guy that he seems to want to be. He's this big walking contradiction, whose aesthetic is a mashup of violent macho patriotism and unironic peace-at-any-cost pragmatic militarism, struggling to reconcile an identity apart from his abusive father, who wasn't simply a bigot, but a racism-themed supervillain. You know, and then Creature Commandos is right up front even more darkly than Squad was about its characters being effectively dehumanized prison slave labor forced to operate as a government dirty work team. Circe apparently has godlike powers, but her followers, they're just these drooling simps with guns. Meanwhile, a version of the Justice League International are apparently a plot point in Superman, and based on what little has been seen and snapped from that movie, they seem to have a very corporate mercenary military ops vibe happening as well. In fact, every version of big-time superheroism that's been seen so far outside of that DCEU-style League cameo from Peacemaker Season 1 that they're almost definitely going to retcon away somehow in Season 2 feels about the same way. Military-industrial complex tactical police aesthetics for heroes who are cynical or outright resentful about their place in the machinery, and a world that's gone jaded about the whole thing in response, either shrugging it off or being resentful right back to them. Oh, hey, they're also making The Authority in this first wave of projects? Gee, how about that? So, what does this look like?
This looks like a job for Superman.
Well, yeah, I mean, you don't need me to connect those dots. Things are bad and crummy in this superhero universe, and then Superman, classic style, back to basics, red underwear and all, is going to show up and go, there's a better way, and presumably there'll be conflicts over that, and that's the foundation of a story and overarching theme. Like, it's even in the official synopsis of the movie. He is the embodiment of truth, justice, in the American way, in a world that views this as old-fashioned. But it also feels more than a little bit, and I'm talking about subtext and cultural undercurrents here because so far subtlety is not necessarily part of the equation, like a way to decisively stake out a position aesthetically, thematically, and even ideologically apart from the overriding influence that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has had on the genre for the last whole generation of the genre, specifically the unifying vision of superheroes as benevolently militarized status quo police figures. I will explain.